Hello. So, I've been sitting in a lot of meetings around the issue of affordable housing versus workforce housing, right? And I thought that it might be a good idea to, have a conversation about some of the misinformation that exists out there about the distinction. So, one of the issues that I find that I face in the work that I do is that there is a false assumption that if you build a house, like I assume almost at any price point, it would not matter that if you build a house in a certain community that people perceive to be in a community of a disproportionate number of folks of average incomes, that the housing that you are thereby constructing is then defined is by definition at that point low-income housing. Go figure that one out. Follow the logic. And so, and this is how I know that the assumption is being made, as wrong-headed as it is. The assumption then is when I say, oh, well, I'm doing a development of X number of units of this type of houses, many times I will flat out say for home ownership, such as the project that we're about to embark upon in a couple of weeks. For home ownership, and the response will be, oh, that's great. But what about workforce housing? What about workforce housing? So the assumption is that a police officer, a teacher, a nurse, that any other professional, a firefighter, could not purchase one of those homes, no matter the price point, because that's low-income housing. And now that I've said it, and I'm sure that any of you who do work in affordable housing have probably sat in rooms where conversations like that were held around you. But now just follow the logic, though. I really don't need to say another word. Just simply follow the logic that if I build a $200,000 house in a community where say, for example, most of the people work, where most of the people on the shore work, which is in the poultry plants, right? So let's say it's a husband and wife, they both work in the poultry plant, and they bring in, together $65,000 a year, right? Let's just say that's their family income, right? By definition, would that family, depending on the family composition and size, might that family qualify for a lower income house? Yes. But teachers don't make a lot more money than that on the shore either, right? Nurses very well may make a good bit more than that on the shore. But by definition, many of the professional roles that we are referring to, the folks do not make much more than the people oftentimes who are at the poultry plants. They make $30,000, $40,000 a year, right? So the idea then says if you're building a house in this particular community, then it must thereby, by definition, be low income, suggests that those folks who are considered to be professionals would not be able to purchase a home in that community. I say it's deeper than that. I say that it's not just the income levels that people perceive to be in a certain community, but it is the demographic itself. Need I go any deeper than that? It is the demographic itself. And the specific descriptor for that demographic being ethnic, subcategory for that demographic being the ethnic background of those who exist in that community. The very definition thereby becomes that must be low income. So, for example, when we built New Road, yes, many of the communities in that time, 30 years ago, were considered low income people, but we didn't build a single low income house for home ownership. What does that even mean? Anyone who could have qualified for a mortgage could have acquired a home at any income. Did we also have to do some things to make the units affordable, such as establish our own mortgage pool, like I'm trying to do right now, establish our own alternative loan pool so that we could capitalize some of those mortgages that fell outside, for people who would fall outside of conventional amortization, conventional lending parameters? Absolutely. Not suggesting that we would not sell to people of lower incomes, and not even take the steps to do the additional things that we would need to do to assemble funding for those people who are within those income, who met the lower thresholds for income. That does not mean that if you had a higher income that you could not get a mortgage and purchase the house. It is fundamentally racist, I'll just say it for you, to assume that if a house is in a particular neighborhood, then it is thereby low income. I will also share with you that we didn't build the only properties that we built one property, and that was late in the process. That was in 2009. We built one 16-unit development that had an income-based criteria in the neighborhood. 160, and that was after we had built all of the homes for home ownership. For everybody, if you were familiar with our process, you know that our plan was that everybody who wanted to be a homeowner could be a homeowner, no matter the income. So we didn't have a cap on the income, but we also did not have a floor. That was the only difference. So whenever I hear this conversation of these distinctions being drawn about workforce housing versus low-income housing, and we've done enough low-income housing, we need to build that suggests that a police officer can't live in that neighborhood. That suggests that a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher cannot live in that neighborhood. And that is wrong. Not only is it wrong, it's illegal. And I'm going to say it's racist. So before we step out and continue to kind of pass misinformation or subject ourselves to false ideas about what is and is not low income, who is and is not low income. First of all, most of the people on the Eastern Shore, with the two primary employers that we have, would qualify for what I think some people believe is low income. And that doesn't matter what your race is. But the assumption that if the house is built in a particular demographic area, that it is by definition then low income, that's what I'm pushing back against, right? So there's a whole lot of misinformation. There's a whole lot of things that just need to be cleared up about what we mean when we say the things we say. Because when you say, what about affordable housing? Don't say the words affordable housing anymore, because that thereby suggests low income. And then if you say low income, that means that anything that you're building right now in certain places is also low income by definition. Then you're being racist and don't even know it. Be careful. So when you say we want workforce housing, be clear that you know what you're saying. Because I do believe that workforce housing is important, but don't suggest it. Don't suggest to yourself, don't assume, I should say, that if it's built in a certain area, then it is thereby low income. Because then you're treading into really murky waters. That's all I got to say.